Following the release of Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, Big Sky Interactive, the company responsible for its creation, closed its doors, so Nickelodeon gave the SpongeBob game license to a different developer, Heavy Iron Studios, and in late October 2003 they released SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, the second main series SpongeBob game and the topic of this episode.
As soon as the game starts, you're greeted by the SpongeBob theme as the camera slowly moves down to reveal SpongeBob eagerly standing in front of his house, awaiting you to press start. So let's do that. It all begins as another peaceful day in Bikini Bottom, which is soon disrupted by another one of Plankton's diabolical schemes. He creates an army of robots to take over Bikini Bottom, but forgets to hit the obey switch, causing the robots to turn against him and wreak havoc across the town. While this is going on, SpongeBob and Patrick are getting really bored playing with their robot toys and decide to risk for real robots using Patrick's magic wishing shell, and they wake up the following morning to find Bikini Bottom had been completely overrun by robots. So SpongeBob, and eventually Patrick and Sandy, work together to destroy the robot menace and save Bikini Bottom. This opening cutscene, along with the rest of this game's cutscenes, looks really good. All the character models look really nice, and every movement looks very natural and cartoony, miles better than the previous game. The only real downgrade is in the voice acting, due to the lack of Clancy Brown, the voice of Mr. Krabs, and Ernest Borgnine, the voice of Mermaid Man. Since Mermaid Man wasn't in the last game, I can't consider the lack of his proper voice a downgrade, but that doesn't excuse it. Both these beloved characters were instead voiced by Joe White, and he does not do them justice. Mr. Krabs sounds really off.
No more Krusty Krab means no more fry cooking for you.
And Mermaid Man sounds completely awful.
Man Ray! The atomic flounder! The dirty bubble!
But besides the two of them, the entire voice cast from the show is here, and they do a fantastic job bringing these characters to life.
I've got nerves of steel and muscles of sand.
And eyes of jelly.
I always knew SpongeBob would be the death of me.
Get ready for a hot fudge twister, Texas style.
I knew I shouldn't have made a copy of myself, but I'm just so cute.
Anyways, after this opening cutscene sets up the game perfectly, you're free to begin exploring SpongeBob's house, learn all about his new moveset, and become familiarized with all the different kinds of collectibles. From the get-go, SpongeBob's moveset consists of a double jump, a spin attack, during which I would like to point out he spins his bubble wand, the bubble bash, an upward strike, and the bubble bounce, a downward slam. It's a pretty basic moveset, but that's not a bad thing. It allows the player to get a feel for these standard abilities without overwhelming them and overcomplicating things right off the bat with the less implemented ones. These are instead introduced in later parts of the game, and I'll talk about each of them as they become available. And that's just for SpongeBob. There are two other playable characters to talk about, but again, we'll wait until they're introduced to us. As you continue to explore the house, you're introduced to shiny objects, which are abundantly scattered around the world and can be used to further progress in an area or unlock a new task. You also find a sock, but its purpose isn't explained until later. You're also shown the main collectible of the game, golden spatulas, which grant access to new areas and open up more sections of the hub world. So, as the game's tutorial, SpongeBob's house does its job exceptionally well. It's really fun to explore all the different rooms, and by the time you're ready to leave, you're already familiarized with all of SpongeBob's abilities and the main objectives of the game. It's so well done. When you exit the house, you enter Bikini Bottom, the hub world, which serves a number of purposes. It obviously serves as a gateway to each area, but it also offers a few ways to get additional golden spatulas. Mr. Krabs explains that he'll trade you a golden spatula for a certain number of shiny objects, that number increasing by 500 after each completed trade, and Patrick explains that he's missing a bunch of socks like the one from earlier, and if you find and return 10 of them, he'll give you a golden spatula. You can even find a few spatulas sprinkled around that can be obtained by completing a task for an NPC, or making it through a relatively simple platforming challenge. The first of these platforming challenges requires you to jump across these floating platforms to get to the top of the pineapple before the timer runs out. You can even get a golden pair of underwear during it, which increases your max health, but the primary reason as to why this challenge is so important is because this is the first chance we get to critique this game's platforming. SpongeBob controls great, all his abilities are really fun to use and add a lot of variety to the gameplay, and the platforming sections themselves have some really unique and challenging designs, which I absolutely love. This first one is nothing special, but it's just there to give you a taste of the platforming mechanics, and they're incredibly solid. All the collision detection is on point, the shadows are always there and look great, giving you an excellent feel of where you are in this 3D environment, and when you're playing as SpongeBob, you can even use the spin attack while descending to prolong your airtime a bit. The platforming is very well designed and is all around fun. I don't have any complaints with it. So with all that said, let's head over to the first area, Jellyfish Fields, and it's a really great first level. When you arrive, Squidward is attacked by a group of jellyfish, and we are told the only way to treat the stings is to scale Spork Mountain and get King Jellyfish Jelly. Every time you enter any of the areas for the first time, a character from the show gives you a main objective, a reason for exploration, then you're free to wander as you please, casually working toward the main objective as you traverse the massive area and complete other objectives along the way. It's awesome. All of the areas are so open, there's so much you can do, and there are even a few situations along the way when the game will tell you to come back once you have a certain ability unlocked. The level design is so good. Since Jellyfish Fields is the first level, it shows off the majority of this game's recurring gameplay features along with some other important objects and enemies. Right in the beginning, you're introduced to the standard enemy type, these little robot dudes that charge right at you and swing a ball of electricity in an attempt to hit you, and they're really easy to avoid and take one hit to kill. Great. And I'd like to point out that SpongeBob has a different running animation for when he's running away from enemies. Nice little detail. Anyways, right after, you find the first teleport box, which allows you to fast travel from one section of a level to another once both boxes are opened, and I really like these. They make it very easy to get around these large areas quickly. As you continue to progress, you'll find the first bungee jump, and I'm really not a fan of these. You simply jump onto the fishing hook, aim for the spatula, and press A to dive. They just feel like an effortless and tacked on way to raise the golden spatula count. After some basic platforming, you'll encounter the Hammer enemy type, which triggers a short introductory clip that shows off its behavior. Most of the new enemy types get one of these clips, and I really like them. But since the game allows you to tackle the levels in whatever order you choose as long as you have enough golden spatulas, throughout my playthrough there were multiple occasions in which I was introduced to an enemy type after I had encountered and figured out how it worked previously. It's nothing intolerable, but it can be a little annoying. At the end of this sub-area, you're introduced to the Duplicatotron 1000, which continuously creates robots until it's destroyed, and after you destroy it and press this button, you get a golden spatula and can enter the next sub-area, the Jellyfish Caves, which shows off a recurring gameplay style, sliding, and it's so fun. Sliding is a commonly implemented gameplay style in 3D platformers, but I've never seen it as well done as it is in this game. Every slide is super fast-paced, controls great, is well designed with branching paths and secrets, and there's at least one featured in almost every area, and I always look forward to them. The music paired with these slides is fantastic and really gets the adrenaline pumping.
And while we're on the topic of music, this game has a really awesome soundtrack, and unlike Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, it's implemented properly, with each area having its own original composition that adds so much to the atmosphere of the location in which it plays. I'll point out some of the areas with the most notable tunes when we get to them.
Anyways, after the slide, there's a second teleport box that'll bring you back to just before the slide so you can redo it. Most of the slides have this, and it makes it very easy to try again and collect something you may have missed, or take a different route you couldn't react to in time on your first attempt. Very nice. When you're done with the slide, you have to save Patrick from the robots by destroying all of them and pressing all 3 buttons, which will cause a path to appear that leads you to Patrick, who will give you a golden spatula and take over for SpongeBob, leading to the Patrick tutorial. He's got the double jump. Rather than the spin attack, he has a belly slam that can't be used in midair, and the belly flop, which is just SpongeBob's bubble bounce with a bit more range and the ability to stun enemies. Unique to Patrick is the ability to pick up and throw things, which allows him to hit faraway enemies or buttons, and is commonly used to guide watermelons through puzzles, launch you to faraway areas on a catapult, or freeze water and access other areas. You can also pick up stunned enemies and tiki heads, and I haven't talked about those yet. Tiki heads are this game's crates or barrels, and I'm so glad they didn't just go the generic and bland route because I really like the tiki head idea. They fit the theme of the game well, and this is an excellent example of the developers having some creative freedom and doing an exceptional thing with it. Anyways, during the Patrick tutorial, you're also introduced to the bus stop, which allows you to switch between characters, something you have to do a lot because the abilities specific to one character and the abilities specific to another are both necessary to overcome certain obstacles and achieve certain goals, and the developers really used this to their advantage and created some really awesome puzzles. Luckily, the game places these bus stops relatively generously. Whenever I needed to switch characters, there was almost always a bus stop nearby, and I rarely felt as though I needed to backtrack to find one. In Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, there was no character switching, but rather costume changing, which was so pointless. It wasn't a concept used to create some cool puzzles or anything, it was just a useless gimmick. Only one of the costumes was actually necessary for the majority of the game, and when a costume change was needed, it was for nothing more than surpassing a tedious obstacle that required backtracking to look for the nearest costume tent. It was bad. But in this game, the character changing is used so nicely, it adds so much to the level design. I will say this first level isn't as creative with this concept, but that's just because it's trying to teach the player everything and get them comfortable with all these unique abilities. Throwing in too much character switching puzzle solving would overcomplicate things too quickly for beginners. After you work your way through the caves, doing some cool things with Patrick's abilities, you're shown the tartar enemy type that shoots 3 globs of tartar sauce at you. Then you're shown SpongeBob's ability to tiptoe, allowing him to sneak up on enemies or tikis, which isn't that important now, but will be heavily implemented in a later stage. I also want to point out that the ability comes complete with piano key sound effects. Nice. Near the end of the level, you're shown SpongeBob's wall jump, which again isn't really utilized until a later stage. Then you climb Spork Mountain and encounter King Jellyfish for the first boss fight. He chases you around for a bit, eventually lowering himself to the ground and releasing a circle of electricity, and after jumping over it, you have a window to attack. Hit him once and he releases some normal jellyfish, hit him twice and he releases some purple jellyfish, which are much faster and larger, and hit him 3 times to win. For an early game boss, it's pretty good. It's about as difficult as you'd expect, and the fact that it's an actual character from the show makes it that much more enjoyable. When you defeat him, he gives up some jelly, and after completing another short slide, we can go back to the first area and give it to Squidward, who rewards us with a golden spatula. If you have 5 golden spatulas, you can enter the next area, downtown Bikini Bottom. And wow, it actually looks like downtown from the show. Not a thug or dark alley to be seen, just tons of familiar looking buildings and townsfolk. And the atmospheric music here is so relaxing and amazing. Just... so good. Saying this area is miles better than it was previously doesn't say too much, but I think saying it's one of the best areas in the game does. When you arrive, Mrs. Puff says everyone needs to evacuate because the robots are destroying the town, but they're unable to do so until they find all 11 steering wheels, so you gotta search the town and find them all. Right after this, you're introduced to the SpongeBall power-up, which allows you to get around faster, but controls like absolute garbage. It's one of the very few things in this game I'm not fond of. It does help with getting around the hub world faster once it's fully expanded, which is nice, and after you beat the game there's a cool use for it that I'll get into later, but when it's used in levels it just isn't that good. It's mostly used for timed events or to get past some basic obstacle, and it just feels so unnecessary. These could have easily been replaced with a quick slider platforming challenge, and that would have been awesome. If it was exclusive to the hub world and that post-game thing, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but it isn't, so... You're then shown the glove enemy type, which spins around and can only be damaged from above, so you gotta bubble bounce on him. After you progress a bit further, you'll find a bus stop, and this time, rather than switching to Patrick, you'll switch to Sandy and are introduced to all of her abilities. She's got the double jump, her main attack is a karate chop, and she can kick in midair. She doesn't have a sort of ground pound attack, but that's not a big deal because her unique moves more than make up for it. If you hold the jump button while descending, she spins her lasso, allowing her to stay afloat for a few additional seconds and hover across larger gaps, making her the most versatile character. Her lasso can also be used to grab and pull faraway enemies or objects, and grapple onto and swing from Texas icons. These abilities make Sandy, in my opinion, the most fun to play as. So many more platforms become accessible, and there's just so much more you can do. I played as her every chance I got. After you're introduced to everything, your skills are put to the test. You have to jump rooftop to rooftop to help Larry replace his antenna. After a few buildings, you're introduced to the Chuck enemy type, and these dudes launch water missiles at you, and the knockback they cause is insane, and to be honest, if any enemy damages you throughout the entire game, the knockback they inflict is pretty significant. Needless to say, if one of these guys hits you while you're in midair, you're as good as gone. Anyways, the platforming in this entire section is so good. Sandy's abilities are so fun to use. At the end of it, you switch to SpongeBob and head into the lighthouse, where you battle a few waves of enemies. The combat abilities are nothing special, but nothing bad either. It's pretty enjoyable. The only thing left to do in this area is go to the Sea Needle, which is just a ton of bungee jumping, but in this case it isn't as easy as every other time. You have to instead aim for and break everything, which can be very tedious and time consuming. I think I preferred it being an effortless way to get a spatula. This is also an instance in which the game tells you to come back once you have a required upgrade, so I'll be sure to do that. If you found all the steering wheels, you can return them to Mrs. Puff and collect your reward, and once that's done and you have 10 golden spatulas, you can move on to the next area, Goo Lagoon. And hey, it doesn't look like a desert this time, it actually looks like a beach. As soon as you arrive, you encounter the Monsoon enemy type that summons thunderclouds that attempt to shock you, and they can only be defeated from below, so you gotta bubble bash them. Then Larry says a big robot took all the sunscreen, so we gotta turn all the sun's reflectors to point the sun's rays to the big reflector, then swim out to and turn the big reflector onto the robot to destroy it. Okay. Connecting the towers isn't very fun, but Patrick's platforming challenge from tower to tower is pretty awesome. Mrs. Puff also asks you to pop the balloons that are carrying the children to save them, which is another not very fun objective. But after this, you enter a giant sandcastle and have to climb to the top to collect the golden spatula, but as soon as you enter, the water level begins to rise and you have to make it to the top before it catches you, and this is a really fun platforming challenge. Racing against the water before it can get to you is fun, one of the best parts of this level. Then you enter the Goo Lagoon sea caves, which are pretty cool to explore and moderately difficult, but still nothing that great. What saves this level from just being okay is the pier, the carnival, which is awesome. It looks really nice, there are a bunch of different games to play, a pretty cool slide, and some unique challenges. I really enjoyed it. When you're done there, you catapult yourself to the island with the big reflector, switch to SpongeBob, and turn it to face the island with the sunscreen, killing the robot, saving the day, and earning another golden spatula. If you've collected 15 golden spatulas, you can enter the Poseidome and take on the first main boss, Robot Sandy. The fight's broken up into 3 phases, each of which require you to hit the robot 3 times. The first phase has you playing as SpongeBob, and the robot will lunge at you, then do a ground pound aiming for you, both of which send out a wave of dust that has to be avoided. Getting hit by anything resets the pattern, but if all is evaded, there's an opening for you to use your bubble bounce on the robot, causing its head to fly off into the electricity above. The next phase has you playing as Patrick. The attack pattern is pretty similar, but this time the robot also attacks by extending its legs and sweeping across the arena. When it's done attacking and you belly slam on it, the head flies off and lands on the floor, leaving you an opening to pick it up and throw it into the electricity. The final phase has you once again playing as SpongeBob, and the attack pattern is the same as last time, except when the robot sweeps across the arena, it extends its arms too, making it harder to avoid. Once that's all avoided, using the bubble bounce causes the robot's head to come off once again, but this time the robot catches it and holds it out for a few seconds, leaving an opening to bubble bash underneath it, and once you do that 3 times, you win. This is a really good boss fight. The abilities unique to SpongeBob and Patrick are all utilized excellently, and it's just fun to play. Oh, and throughout the entire thing, the reporter fish guy narrates the fight and gives tips to the player. He does this for all the main boss fights, and it's awesome.
Whoa! What an opening for a guy literally filled with openings!
Once the boss is defeated, the second section of the hub world is unlocked and a new ability becomes available, the Bubble Bowl, a rolling ground attack that works pretty well. My only problem with it is a very minor one. Once it's activated and you go to aim, SpongeBob slowly moves forward, which can make hitting your target a bit more difficult, but it's not that bad. So this new section of the hub world has Sandy's tree dome, which is leaking. Again. So we gotta defeat all the robots in another one of those combat challenges. There's a greater variety of enemies this time, and it's pretty fun. The tree dome itself isn't as expansive as it was last time, but it still looks nice, and there are so many nods to the episode T at the tree dome. The dried up SpongeBob model, Patrick peeking in from outside, the bird bath, and SpongeBob even quotes a few lines from the episode.
This is one of the many instances in which the developer's commitment to the source material really shines. There are so many references sprinkled throughout the entire game, and it's just so great.
Even when you die, a familiar looking hand is there to pick you up and bring you back to the nearest checkpoint. It's incredible. This new section of the hub world is also home to the police station, which shows off all the different enemy types, which is kinda cool, but only recently did I fully realize its significance and why it makes me appreciate the game so much more. Think about it, all these enemies had to have been original creations, and despite Heavy Iron Studios being well aware that they were creating a licensed game, they wanted to show off their own creations, because they weren't just cashing in on the SpongeBob brand name, they were instead trying to create their own game, and a fantastic one at that. This makes me really happy and significantly raises the overall quality of the game in my eyes. Anyways, the first new area is the Mermalair, and it would take the title as the most energetic and explosive music in the game if that title weren't already taken by the sliding music. One of my favorite tracks from the previous game was the Mermaid Man costume music, and this track manages to top that. It's great. Now the level itself, not so great. When you first arrive, Mermaid Man says the Mermalair's security system had been overrun by a bunch of robots, and they're counting on SpongeBob to shut it down. Doesn't seem so bad. Then you encounter the ARF enemy type, which shoots a bunch of little robot dogs at you, and your best bet is hitting him from afar with the Bubble Bowl. You're also shown these paddle wheels that can be hit with the Bubble Bowl to trigger an event. Still nothing bad so far, but as soon as you enter the Mermalair main chamber, it all goes downhill. Near the beginning, there's a section where you have to press 3 buttons as Patrick, but each of them requires you to pick up a watermelon and guide it through a puzzle. The puzzles themselves are kinda difficult, but what takes it from a fun challenge to a frustrating chore is the fact that the watermelons explode after a few seconds, meaning you don't have enough time to thoughtfully work through them, but rather just enough time to race through them and hopefully succeed. It's not fun. Then you switch to SpongeBob and work your way up to the Mermalair computer, which tells you there are 4 buttons that need to be pressed to regain control of the security system, so we gotta search for them. One is right next to the computer, 2 2 are in the Mermalair security tunnel, which is pretty cool. You have to work your way across these disco floors and avoid the red tiles, which is good fun. And the last one is in the rolling ball area, which is a very pointless and annoying sub-area. You have to roll this ball through an obstacle course and use your different abilities to trigger different things that allow the ball to perform necessary maneuvers. It's nowhere near as bad as the awful Chum putt, but this really shouldn't be here and lowers the quality of an already not so good level. But when you return to the computer, you're rewarded with a golden spatula and are able to press the master shutdown button, which also creates a path to the villain containment area and apparently releases one of the villains, Prawn, who is a character we've never seen in the show and was made just for this game, and he has a pretty cool design. The boss fight against him is probably the most unique in the game and is very fun. He blasts tons of sonic waves at you and you gotta avoid those on top of whatever enemies spawn. After avoiding everything for a few seconds, the disco floor between you and him will create a path that you can roll the bubble bowl down to hit him. After each hit, everything gets faster and more enemies spawn. When you hit him 3 times, you win and he is refrozen. If you have 25 golden spatulas, you can go to Rock Bottom, which is loaded with references to the Rock Bottom episode. The weird bathrooms are here, all the fish have their tongues out, and my absolute favorite, the candy machine. When you first arrive, you're introduced to the Sleepy Time enemy type, which can only be damaged if it's snuck up on, and SpongeBob is the only character with the ability to tiptoe. Not even Sandy's lasso is long enough to be able to damage it. Besides this new enemy needing to be snuck up on, there are these new types of platforms that collapse unless they're snuck across. I really like the implementation of the tiptoe and the overall stealthy atmosphere this area has, but part of that's the music's doing. So Mrs. Puff says you need to find all the museum's stolen art and return it to her in exchange for a golden spatula. Okay. This first section has a lot of SpongeBob, and that's not good, but the parts with Sandy are really great. Then you enter the museum and have to shut down all the security systems, and once that's done, there's some excellent platforming. It's a very well designed area, forcing you to restart after each failure and get better at previous sections until you complete the entire thing in one go, leaving you feeling very accomplished. Then Sandy helps Plankton activate all the lasers to access the last part of the Trench of Advanced Darkness.
This isn't your average everyday darkness. This is advanced darkness.
Then you get a pretty good slide that brings you back to the beginning of the area, where you can return the paintings to Mrs. Puff. If you've got 30 golden spatulas, you can access the next area, Sand Mountain, and right away Squidward tells you to rid each slope of the robots, which he will reward with a golden spatula. The main section of this area acts as a mini hub world with doors leading to 3 different slopes, and each one requires 1,500 shiny objects to enter. Before each slope, a character will challenge you to beat their time, and if you beat their time, you get a golden spatula on top of the one you get for simply completing the slide. The slides themselves are the longest ones in the game, and each one of them is so well designed and incredibly fun to play thanks to the aforementioned perfect sliding mechanics. That's really all I have to say about this area. If you've collected 40 golden spatulas, you can enter Industrial Park and take on the second main boss, Robot Patrick. The fight's once again split into 3 phases that each require you to hit the robot 3 times. The first phase has you playing as SpongeBob, and the robot hits its ice cream at the ground, causing bits of it to fly toward you, then spits a glob of acid at you and continues to spin around and spray acid in every direction. Getting hit resets the pattern, and if all is avoided, the robot gets dizzy and you can spin attack its back. After the first phase, SpongeBob is frozen by the robot and Sandy has to take over for the second phase. The ice cream hit is removed and it cuts right to the spit, then it does its spin, which still makes it dizzy. After each hit, the robot raises the acid level 1 step, making it slightly harder to hit it when it's vulnerable. And after you land 1 hit during this phase, it starts with a rapid fire acid attack, then continues with the previously stated pattern. The final phase has you once again playing as SpongeBob. The first move is an ice breath that doesn't damage you, but will make you an easier target for the acid spit, which is again followed by the spin and the dizziness, but since the acid prevents you from reaching the robot, you have to hit its back with the bubble bowl, and since the majority of platforms that aren't submerged in acid are treadmills, it can be really difficult to aim. This boss fight, just like the last one, is really good. Similarly to how the first one utilized SpongeBob and Patrick's starting abilities, this one utilizes SpongeBob's newest upgrades and all of Sandy's abilities, and I love this about the boss fights. All of them test your familiarity with the unique abilities of every character and require you to put them to use to emerge victorious. It's so well done. After you beat the boss, the third and final section of the hub world is unlocked and SpongeBob's final new ability becomes available, the Cruise Bubble, a projectile you have full control over for the few seconds it remains before blowing up. It's a really good move. It doesn't control as well as I'd have liked, but it's still fun to use and really helps in these upcoming areas. It's even useful in previous areas. Remember how I talked about the game telling you to come back to certain sections once you have a required upgrade? Well, I didn't bring it up when the Bubble Bowl was unlocked because it wasn't really used to obtain anything important, just a sock and some shiny objects, but returning to the Sea Needle with the Cruise Bubble can actually get you a golden spatula. And this is a good time to bring up the pause menu, which gives you the ability to fast travel to any area and even to specific sections within those areas via the taxi service. It's really awesome, and this occasion is one in which I feel its addition is the most vital. Anyways, this new section of the hub world is home to the Krusty Krab, which is another combat challenge, and it's okay. My favorite one is still Sandy's because of all the subtle references in it, but this one was still good, and I will admit the Krusty Krab looks pretty nice. The first new area is SpongeBob's Dream, which is magnificent. It acts as a mini hub world similar to Sand Mountain, but rather than accessing different ski slopes, you can access the dreams of other characters, just like that episode, and it's really well done. Sandy's Dream is a Texas-themed slide that's pretty difficult. There are so many alternate paths to take and things to avoid. It's good fun. Between each dream is a small but relatively challenging platforming section that will occasionally reward you with a golden spatula. Okay. The next dream is Squidward's, which is all music-themed platforming, jumping across music notes and a number of different instruments while avoiding sharp signs. I like it. Then Mr. Krabs' Dream, which is the last combat challenge, and by far my least favorite. You're surrounded by burgers and money, so I guess it fits Mr. Krabs, but it's incredibly difficult, like seriously. All the hardest enemies in the game are thrown at you at once and just keep spawning until you break all 3 Duplicatotron 1000s, and even after that, killing the remainder of robots is so annoying. If you manage to beat that, you move on to Patrick's Dream, which is a dark room with a single light, and to get the spatula, you simply talk to him. A little underwhelming, but a nice break after the previous dream and is very fitting to Patrick's character, but I would have much preferred an actual platforming section. Oh, apparently they did plan to include a platforming section here. It was going to be made of ice cream and other desserts, but it was scrapped, which Heavy Iron Studios said during an interview was because they didn't believe it suited Patrick's personality as well as what was included in the final game. And though I would have really liked to see this level be included, I agree with why they removed it. If you have 50 golden spatulas, you can head to the Kelp Forest, and this is most definitely my least favorite area in the game. From the start, you're introduced to the Tubulet enemy type, which was in the previous level, so there's no need for this introduction, but they stack on a set of 3, spin around, and shoot fire. They're pretty unique enemies. And if you happen to encounter one on a certain holiday, the flame changes color. It's pretty cool. So Mrs. Puff says 6 campers went missing, and we need to find them all and return them to her, so while we're wandering around, we should keep an eye out for them. The first section has 2 pretty fun puzzles that require both SpongeBob and Patrick's abilities to solve, which isn't bad, but the following sub-area has you switching to Patrick and placing 3 stone tikis on top of pressure plates, and this is not fun. It requires mostly platforming, but it's so dark and you can't see much of anything. The waterfall is so loud and annoying. And every time you die, the tikis reset to their original positions and you have to restart. And it gets worse. After you complete it, you enter the Kelp Caves, which is one long puzzle that utilizes both SpongeBob and Patrick's abilities very frequently, meaning you have to swap characters often, but unlike every other area in the game where bus stops were logically placed, there's a single one placed in the beginning and that's it. Every single time you need a different ability, you have to go all the way back to the start, switch characters, trigger something with the specific ability, then go back, switch characters again for a new ability, go back to where you were, and it's so redundant and boring. And there's this one part where you have to play as Patrick and work your way to the top of the caves to catapult yourself to an out-of-reach platform, and the timing has to be so perfect because you're given just enough time to be able to accomplish this before the watermelon explodes. It's so difficult in the worst possible way. I didn't even want to do it, and the cool thing is you don't have to. The game requires a minimum of 75 golden spatulas to enter the Chum Bucket lab and take on the final boss, which is a pretty generous number. You can skip on quite a few objectives you really don't want to do and still be able to beat the game. It's great and only makes the experience that much better.
In Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, the player is forced to complete every objective and do a bunch of tedious things they didn't necessarily want to do in the name of minimum requirements. But this game gives you some leeway, allowing you to skip a decent number of tasks you don't want to complete, and because of this seemingly minor thing, the overall experience the player has is significantly improved.
If you do pull through and make it to the end of the Kelp Caves, you're rewarded with the hardest and probably the most fun slide in the entire game. It's so challenging, yet it's so awesome. So if you have 60 golden spatulas, you can head to the final area, the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, which shares its name with the final level from the previous game, and like the previous game, it has pretty good music paired with it, but I think this track is far better. The Dutchman's ship has been taken over by the robots, so we gotta help him regain control of it. Fine, I guess we'll help him this time. Right in the beginning, you're shown the slick enemy type, which, again, we've encountered before, but it spits oil at you and has a bubble of oil around it that you have to pop before you can destroy it. It's okay. This first section of the level is all about pushing around these pillars to line them up and allow you to wall jump across them in order to reach higher ground. It's a nice implementation of the ability to wall jump, and this is the first time a section has really been centered around that ability. The next sub area takes the wall jump even further, showing you how to move forward with it, then making you do the same thing over a pit, then doing the same thing over a pit while the walls are moving, then making you wall jump between a wall and a set of rotating planks that have just the right timing. The game takes an underused ability that you've had since the beginning, then further familiarizes you with it and utilizes it in such a way that you're guaranteed to master it by the end of the section. It's brilliant. After that, you have to save the Dutchman's ship from the robots and return it to him, which isn't too bad. You have to aim a few cannons at the ship and fire them, but once you do, the Dutchman goes back on his word and says you aren't getting a golden spatula, to which Sandy responds with an insult that angers the Dutchman and makes him challenge her to a fight. This boss fight is probably the most underwhelming and uninteresting boss fight in the game, but with that being said, it's still better than the final boss in Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. The Dutchman fires 2 lasers at you twice, then charges at you while exhaling green flames, allowing you to get behind him and pull his tail. After each hit, the attack pattern only slightly alters, adding an additional set of shots and another laser to each of these sets, which is again followed by him charging at you and exhaling green flames. Once you hit him 3 times, you defeat him, he'll give up the golden spatula, and that's it for the main areas. The only thing left to do is enter the Chum Bucket lab and take on the final boss, the Robot SpongeBob Robot Plankton duo. In the beginning, the Robot SpongeBob swings its arm across the platforms, and simply jumping over it will leave an opening for you to send a missile at or bubble bounce on one of its weak points. After you hit it twice, the robot goes idle and the Robot Plankton begins firing rapidly at you, and in the seconds between each burst of lasers, you can attack it, causing the Robot SpongeBob to once again become active. This time, the robot starts with a couple karate chops targeting the platform you're currently standing on, then repeats the previous arena sweeping attack, which once again leaves it vulnerable to a hit. Getting hit by any attack or falling off these platforms onto the ground below at any time will reset the attack pattern. After 3 more hits, Robot Plankton steps in again and does the same thing as before. Knock it down and the Robot SpongeBob comes back with yet another new attack, the Karate attack,
I love karate.
which aims for the platform you're currently on, then the 2 that border it, and it's pretty cool. That's followed by the same attacks as previously, but with a few additional karate chops, and after hitting it another 3 times, the Robot Plankton takes over once more, doing the same thing again. And after hitting it, the Robot SpongeBob comes back with no new moves and just does tons of the previous attacks. 3 karate attacks, followed by 4 karate chops and the arena sweep, which leaves an opening to land the fatal blow. Sort of. Its arms fall off and the robot falls flat on its face, but suddenly, giant anchor arms pop out of both sides, then it begins to grow even bigger, and the Robot Plankton escapes into its head, prompting SpongeBob to follow, which leads to the second phase. But this isn't how they originally envisioned the fight to play out. They originally planned to have Robot Muscle Bob as a phase of the fight. The fight would see Patrick picking up and throwing debris at one of the targets on the robot's inflatable arms, which would cause it to deflate, and that's how we really know about it. When it's hacked into the game, popping both arms does nothing more for the fight. I think it would have been pretty cool to see it included in the final game, but I think I know why it wasn't. As you can tell by the footage, the boss doesn't look anywhere near complete, and this specific build of the boss was from August 2003, just a couple months before the game's release, so there's no way they would have been able to finish it in time, so they scrapped it entirely and made the final boss only have 2 phases, which is completely fine. It's still an excellent final boss, it's challenging, fun, and the upcoming phase is one of the best moments in the game. Inside the Robot SpongeBob's head, you put all your skills to the test, destroying enemies wave by wave and shooting down Robot Plankton after each one until you reach the end of the phase. At the end, there are 3 small platforms that each have an opening nearby to the robot's core, but the Robot Plankton follows you around and shoots lasers rapidly at you, so you have to avoid them all and shoot them down to get just enough time to send a cruise bubble at the center. This is incredibly difficult. The platforms are so small and getting hit by a single laser will send you to your doom, and when you die you have to restart the entire phase, but this difficulty is an excellent ending to the game. Once you hit all 3 weak points, the fight ends, the Robot SpongeBob is actually defeated, and SpongeBob escapes from its head. Everyone celebrates their victory, but Sandy reminds them all that there are still robots running around Bikini Bottom, and SpongeBob says he won't rest until they're all destroyed. It's trying to encourage you to go for all 100 golden spatulas. Your reward for doing so is a cutscene showing all the characters singing the remade version of the SpongeBob theme, which is good and all, but not really worth going out of your way to collect everything. Anyways, the credits roll and you unlock the Spongeball Arena, which is the only point in the game that I found the Spongeball genuinely fun to use. The amazing and relaxing music played in downtown Bikini Bottom is played here, and you just get to roll around at your own pace, fly off ramps, glide through loops, and perform a bunch of really cool stunts. It's enjoyable. Then a gateway to the Spongeball Arena is added to the hub world, and that's that. As far as post-game content goes, there's still quite a bit to do, as Sandy said. To beat the game, you only need 75 golden spatulas, and after collecting the 2 from the final boss, that leaves 23 to be collected, so you can obviously go hunting for more of those, or you could just revisit any of your favorite levels. I personally like going back to the Sand Mountain level over again because the sliding's so good, and you can always visit the movie theater if you collect 40,000 shiny objects. It's just a slideshow of some of this game's concept art, which is always something I like to look at. It even shows a couple drawings and concepts for a scrapped robot Squidward boss fight, which we can assume was cut relatively early in development because all the other boss characters have unused audio buried in the game's data, and there's nothing related to a robot Squidward, but these images do give us a bit of an idea of how the boss would have played, but yeah, that's about it.
Looking at the experience as a whole, this game is phenomenal.
It takes the world of SpongeBob, the feeling, the locations, the characters, everything, and seamlessly transitions them into an excellent 3D platformer that not only meets the standards set by staples of the genre, but also expands upon them in many ways, setting an example for not only future licensed games to follow, but also for future platform games to follow. It has incredible controls, a great moveset variety spread across 3 playable characters, amazing, unique level design that cleverly utilizes each of these abilities at one point or another, expansive open worlds with so much to do and find within, an exceptional soundtrack that builds the atmosphere of these worlds, solid platforming mechanics, the best sliding mechanics in any game I've ever played, generous minimum requirements, fantastic boss fights, great visuals for the time that still hold up pretty well today, and so many references to the show that really illustrate how much passion and care the developers put into this game. The only real problems I have with this game are with some of the objectives, but the game doesn't force you to complete every objective and you can skip over the ones you don't really like, so that's not too big of an issue.
SpongeBob SquarePants Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was a game that just barely nudged its way to mediocrity, but SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom completely blows it out of the water, immensely improving upon it in every imaginable way while simultaneously improving on other amazing 3D platformers in countless ways. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom holds up as one of the best licensed games ever created and one of the best games ever created.
Thank you very much for watching this entire video. If you like what you see, leave a like, and if you want to see more, please consider subscribing. Also, if you have any advice for future episodes, let me know in the comments so I can improve for next time. If you'd like to stay up to date with what's going on with me, there's a link in the description to my Twitter, and I occasionally update there, so check that out. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you next time.